What is up? And by some chance you are living under a rock at the bottom of the ocean? Did you know that recently the PlayStation Network was down for almost over 24 hours, leaving millions of players without access to their games or game library, or even some of the services on the PlayStation Network for that matter? Now, Sony did not immediately explain why this happened, and when they did, it was very lackluster. But what if I told you this situation is more concerning than it appears? Stick around, because in the end, this problem is bigger than just PlayStation, and it might just change your perspective of the future of gaming going forward. Now, once again, hello, my fellow critical thinkers. I am Centurion1307, and welcome to the channel, a place where we question the narrative and challenge the status quo. And over the weekend, the PlayStation Network, or PSN, suffered a massive outage, preventing players from accessing online services, purchasing digital content, or even playing single-player games that required authentication. This was not just a minor inconvenience, what have you. It highlighted major issues with how Sony handles online gaming and the rest of the industry for that matter. But what makes this even more concerning was just how silent Sony was being with this whole situation. Like, it was like mum's the word. And this kind of harkens back, because if you remember the infamous 2011 PSN hack, you'll understand why some players were extremely outraged and concerned just from how PlayStation handled the situation. Now, let's just first start with describing the problem. This was not your meaningless little hiccup of a glitch. This felt different this time. Players were locked out of their games, affecting millions of people. There was one Reuters article that claimed it was a small percentage of people, but it appeared that they were using information from Down Detector, and they were only going off of the info that was stated there, where I think it was only 15,000 people complained. But this was much further reaching than just 15,000 people. And Sony was incredibly silent for hours before they acknowledged that there was an outage and a problem, but the explanation was minimal at best. It left players totally scrambling for any kind of information, going to every third-party site, media site, YouTube channel, what have you, whatever individuals out there to toss them a bone, they were listening. And this was a little bit leading into a bigger concern given Sony's history, because of the hack in 2011, where they were extremely silent. And we're going to reiterate all that here in a minute, where we can just explain the history Sony has of not dealing with hacking in a very timely manner. And does this give a very sad glimpse into the future, that if a simple outage can block access to both online and single player games, what does this mean for the future of gaming as a whole? Let's just start kind of breaking it down all right now. Sony has a little bit of a troubled history when it comes to dealing with hacked networks. We all remember back in April of 2011, hackers stole data from PSN, which affected 77 million PSN accounts due to Sony's poor security. From some of the stuff I've read, it's due to lackluster software, unpatched backdoors to the servers, and just an overall very well taken care of situation over there at PSN, which led to the situation that unfolded in 2011, which took Sony 6 days to inform the public, and the delay sparked an even bigger outrage and eventually bit them in the ass with legal action from, I believe, some government representatives and organizations, and I do believe even a couple lawsuits that were filed as a civil action for consumers. But to give the whole timeline, it started April 17th through the 19th in 2011, where hackers infiltrated the PlayStation Network, compromising personal data from 77 million accounts. On April 20th, Sony shut down PSN and did not immediately disclose the reason. Starting to sound familiar? On April 26, 6 days later, Sony finally admitted that user data had been stolen, including names, addresses, emails, and possibly even credit card information. In total, PSN was down for 23 days, making it one of the worst security breaches in console gaming history. Fast forward to 2025, just the other day, when a recent outage hit, Sony once again did not immediately warn users, and for this recent outage, Sony's official statement was extremely vague, simply acknowledging issues with the network with a small tweet that said, "We are aware some users might be currently experiencing issues with PSN." Some users may be experiencing issues? Nah, there was a lot of people experiencing issues, which again left gamers to rely on third-party sources, social media, and community reports to understand the scale of the problem. The delay in communication combined with Sony's history for security breaches raised even big concerns whether this was a simple technical failure or something more serious, which led to a lot of speculation on all the sites that all PlayStation users were going to get any kind of information. And let's just say it was all over the place. There was even clickbait material that was really trying to just harken in and just hook people during the situation. And this led to many gamers fearing the worst, remembering how Sony hid the severity of the 2011 breach for days. Now, before we all get our tinfoil hats on and start pointing fingers, while Sony has not confirmed any security issues, their initial silence fueled a lot of speculation. And they did come out with a small little tweet that just took place, like, again, in the wee hours of at least Sunday morning here, where they stated network services have fully recovered from an operational issue. We apologize for the inconvenience and thank the community for their patience. All PlayStation Plus members will automatically receive an additional 5 days of service. Now, let's just say that additional 5 days of service, for starters, has a lot of people peeved. There was some that even went off the deep end saying that Sony needs to give them free games, but it was like, it was almost like insulting. Like, here's 5 days of, PS Plus, have fun. Thanks, bye. Sorry about your weekend. But now, what is it that Sony can do to convince that this was not a hack? Well, for starters, they got to be a little bit more transparent than saying it was an operational issue. It'd be great if we had a little bit more clarification. Now, the main reason why people are concerned about the hack is not just 2011's issue, but hackers are known to often target online gaming services, and PSN, once again, let's reiterate, was a target once before. Now, Akamai is a global cybersecurity and cloud service company that specializes in content delivery networks, cybersecurity, and DDoS protection. They provide security solutions to businesses, including gaming companies, to help protect against cyber threats such as DDoS attacks, credential stuffing, and data breaches. Akamai's research and security reports frequently analyze trends in cyber attacks, including those targeting the game industry. Now they have a little bit of an outline stating that in 2021, Akamai reported that there was a 167% increase in web application attacks targeting the gaming sector. Then in 2022, the industry was then labeled as the most targeted sector for distributed denial of service, known as DDoSing attacks. And following up in 2023 through 2024, Akamai's security researchers observed a 94% increase in web attacks against games from Q1 2023 to Q1 2024, with June 2024 surpassing the 1 billion attack threshold. And this leads to people stating, including myself, if user data was at risk, Sony needs to be transparent about it, and their stoic silence is a little bit unacceptable at this current situation. With this outage, though, we are not just going to go on the bandwagon and say that Sony was hacked. If it was an operational issue, this leads into an even another concern, which can be almost just as big, because people are assholes. Yes, they're going to hack, and there is no way to stop bad actors. But let's talk about the fact that this proves just how fragile online services can be, where even a single player game can become unplayable without an internet connection. And this kind of leads into the idea that gamers are now renting access rather than truly owning their digital games. The PSN outage did not just affect Sony. It highlighted a growing industry-wide problem that every gamer should be concerned about. Whether you're on PlayStation, Xbox, or even PC, Nintendo, what have you, your access to games is no longer guaranteed just because you paid for them. Your purchases are no longer truly yours. Digital games require verification, and even physical copies nowadays often need online verification. There has been documented instances that literally the discs themselves, the physical discs, contain absolutely no information of the game. It is nothing more than a ticket to ride, a license to play. And outages now mean total lockdown. If a network goes down, even temporarily, you could be locked out of your entire gaming library. It's a punishment system by design. Companies justify always online DRM by saying it prevents piracy, but in reality, it only punishes the paying customers when services fail. Those who are honest are the ones that are always punished because of the actions of the dishonest. We saw this in action with Diablo 3, SimCity 2013, and even single-player games like Hitman and Gran Turismo 7, where outages rendered them completely unplayable. If a server-side decision can dictate whether or not you have access to what you paid for, the question must be asked in the end: do you own your games, or are you just renting them? The industry in the end needs a better solution, and it's time for the gaming industry to stop treating paying customers like criminals. There needs to be a real discussion about consumer rights, offline play options, and the preservation of purchased content, which is honestly another conversation in itself. But a digital library should be just as secure and accessible as a shelf full of physical games, as like you see right behind me. And but even then, it's not like I can just walk up and plop one of those games into the console, because if it can't do the online digital check-in, I'm just shit out of luck. And this is where gamers will continue to face a future where their purchases exist only as long as the companies we give our money to allow them to exist. So in the end, if there was no foul play at hand, this isn't just a Sony issue, it's an industry-wide ticking time bomb, as we like to call it, where the always online dependency that companies are forcing onto gamers is a silent threat. The idea that we own our digital games is just an illusion, because the moment servers go down, we lose access to our purchases, and this problem is not going to go away anytime soon. Xbox, PlayStation, Nintendo, and PC platforms are all pushing towards an online-only future, and this opens the question of single-player games should not be required to have an internet connection, but in the end, more and more do every day. And if companies can decide when you access your purchases, do you really own them? But there is something even more disturbing and questionable. When companies go silent during these outages, they leave consumers vulnerable. If an attack was responsible for this outage at PlayStation or any other outage that would occur with any other service, players deserve to know immediately so they can protect their private data. Delayed responses leave millions exposed, unable to change passwords, remove payment methods, or take basic security precautions to prevent any further damage to their private info. And it's interesting, we saw this in 2011, we are now seeing it over a decade later, and the question is, has Sony or any of the other companies that take our money every single day, have they learned anything at all? In the end, gamers shouldn't have to wonder if their information is at risk or if their games are even going to work at the end of a hard day at work and they just want to come home and play some video games and some guy, either a bad actor, hacked the system or somebody just uploaded a bad piece of code into a server and broke it for over 24 hours. This is where these companies need to build trust with us by being accountable and being transparent with what takes place with their systems, whether it was by nefarious means or accidental. And if the industry doesn't change, we're heading towards a future where companies, not consumers, own everything. And in the end, that's a future worth fighting against. But now this is where I ask you. Were you affected by the outage? How did you feel about Sony's handling and the overall end result with the, hey, here's 5 days? But also, how do you feel about just how the gaming industry as a whole is handling these situations when it comes to whether it's an accidental outage or a hacked outage? It just leaves a lot for discussion, and this conversation is far from over because, you know, like we talked about, we don't really see it change tomorrow. So it's just going to get to a boiling point where consumers probably lose their damn minds before something really groundbreaking takes place in gaming to alter the course that it's on right now. So finally, this is where I end off with saying that thank you for watching. I am Centurion1307. I like to try to take the game industry news and break it down with facts, logic, and sometimes a little bit of satire. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, please, once again, let me remind you to like and subscribe for future videos. And also, if you get the chance, share it out to fellow critical thinkers like yourself, because let's just say there's a lot of crazy people out there that like to just go off the beaten path of sanity. But remember, everybody, keep questioning the narrative, and I'll see you in the next video.